never heard of this YouTube channel. But I kind of interested in what they have to say. Am I having stream issues? Or is it just my tablet? I think it's just my tablet. Alright, cool. Alright. So, let's see what they have to say. And now, I haven't seen any of this video. The last video, I'd seen the first minute or so. But I haven't seen any of this video. It's only 3 minutes long. So, hopefully there won't be any... it won't be too long of a video for me to upload. But let's take a look. Open mic with Sydney Watson.
In America, a police officer is 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a black man than an unarmed black man is to be killed by a police officer.
So, I'm pretty sure that statistic is technically true. Though the most likely way a police officer is to pass away is through suicide, which is not a joke. It's not something to make fun of, but if we're talking about the thing that's most lethal to police officers, it's themselves. The problem is, and I think the thing that she's going to kind of obfuscate and get away from here and try to kind of shift the conversation about, is that when a black man kills a police officer, the suspect is immediately arrested. They are immediately charged, and more often than not convicted, because there's usually a plethora of evidence to support the case that this person was the one that committed the offense. The problem and the reason why people are protesting and why Black Lives Matter is the thing is because when a cop does it, when a cop kills an unarmed black man, despite the fact that what she said makes it seem like it doesn't happen all that often, which is true. The vast majority of police interactions are non-lethal. However, when a cop does kill an unarmed black person, or an unarmed person at all, or an innocent person, and just appoints themselves judge, jury, and executioner, excuse me, the cop isn't charged. The cop isn't reprimanded. They either go along with their day or are given paid vacation. It took weeks of protests in the streets for the officers that murdered George Floyd to be even arrested, and even more for them to be charged, especially the one that did the kneeling on his neck, to be charged with murder, which is what it was. It was murder. It may not have been premeditated, which is why he's only got murder 2, and instead of, I believe, murder 1 is when it's premeditated. But it took weeks of protests for that to happen. It's the same as that article that's going around right now of or that Facebook post of the black guy that, you know, murdered that kid that was riding his bike outside of his house. And why isn't the media making a shitstorm out of this like they did with George Floyd? And they don't really care about murder. They just hate police. It's because the guy that committed the crime was immediately arrested when they found him. He was immediately charged. And is either going to spend the rest of his life in prison, or, depending on the state, because I don't know which state it's in, could be facing execution. If he was a police officer, that would have been a different story, even if it was a child. That's what the protests are about. That's why the media isn't making a shitstorm out of it. It's because murder, unfortunately, happens every day in this country. The reason why when the police do it, it gets media attention is because police aren't supposed to murder people. Police are supposed to catch the murderers. They're not supposed to be the murderers. And when police do commit murder, they aren't held accountable for it 9.5 times out of 10. That's why it becomes a large thing in the media. Whereas a regular murder between 2 civilians isn't made nationally news, especially when the person's immediately arrested. They're just being racist and trying to say, well, you care about this murder but not this one because it was done by a black man against a white person. See, you're the real racist. That's the narrative they're trying to paint because they just want to have a justification to hate black people. It's as simple as that. Um, and it's unfortunate, but it's kind of a false narrative that they're trying to paint, which is I'm assuming what she's going to try and do here.
It's not spin. That's a statistical fact. On the surface, and with what's going on today, some people will brush off that statistic, because it's much easier to believe that all cops are bad, and as LeBron James put it, black people are being hunted every time they leave their home, than admit
That's true in our society. Our society is based off of white supremacy. So when a person of color, particularly black people, leave their homes, they are in danger because of the racism that pervades every single aspect of our society, but particularly in law enforcement. A black person is, I think the statistic is 4.5 times more likely to be killed by a cop in any given situation than I am as a white person for the exact same crime committed in the exact same circumstances. They are 4.5 times more likely to be killed by a police officer. But to go back to the first thing that she said, the acronym is not all cops are bad, it's all cops are bastards. And it's because every single cop in this country works for a racist system, and they don't take steps to actively change it. They turn a blind eye when their counterparts, when their brothers in arms does something fucked up. They'll cover for them, and you see this again and again and again in multiple different cases across the country. They'll cover for them, and they just simply don't face justice when they do commit acts like murder or brutalizing people and committing assault. And it more often than not, or not more often than not, but statistically per capita more often happens to people of color, particularly black people. It's because they work for a system and don't hold their fellow officers accountable when they do fucked up shit, which is where the term all cops are bastards come from, because even if you're not the person that is killing black people or is beating the crap out of a suspect for no reason, you're still turning a blind eye and not calling them out. The few cops that do get blacklisted and harassed and sometimes institutionalized to try and keep it hush. That's where the term comes from. That's what people are saying when they're saying ACAB. It's not that each police officer individually is a racist and that each police officer individually wants to kill black people. It's that they're willing to turn a blind eye to it when it happens. Who opened my door? Why is my door open? That's better. Whoa.
admit to the fact that everyone has been misled when it comes to this issue. America has been sold this idea that police brutality is out of control.
It is out of control compared to other countries. If you look at countries like Japan, despite the fact that they have very strict laws over there, they have far fewer police killings. In the last time the data was available for, which is 2019, there were, I think, 128 killings by police in America. There was 2 in Japan. 2. And they have a third the population as America. So if things were the same statistically, they would have about 40 to 50 killings by police each year, justified or not. That would be where they were at. They have 2. There are similar statistics for, and that's just deaths at the hands of police officers. You also have to take into account assaults, general brutality, profiling, things of that nature that you don't see in other developed nations around the world. It is out of control in the U.S., which is why we're trying to change it. Cats. Oh, that's why the door was open. Thank you, honey. But I don't want the cats in here while I'm recording.
And while that might be true in specific cases, that is not a true and accurate representation of the overall reality.
Yes,
so
it
let's
is.
look at some.
I'm going to assume you don't live in America and that you're not familiar with the situations that go on in this country. Just judging by your accent, I know you're Australian, but you may live in America, in which case you're just being stupid. You're just openly denying the reality that we face in this country. But if you don't live here, keep your nose out of our business. We don't need your Brit bonger opinions on this.
Statistics, shall we? In 2018 and 2019, of almost 10.5 million arrests and 53 million interactions between police officers and civilians, there were around 1,000 fatal shootings by police. That being said, most of these people were considered armed.
Oh, is it 1,000? So it's even worse. Hang on. Let me go back. Let me go back. Make sure I don't misquote her.
3 million of. So let's look at some statistics, shall we? In 2018 and 2019,
Okay, so over the course of 2 years, there was over 1,000 killings by police. The statistic I read, which is on Wikipedia, so grain of salt, was at around 140, 130. Over 1,000. There's 2 in Japan, at least according to that statistic. Here, let's do this so that I don't accidentally TOS myself for some reason. Oh. Doo-doo-doo. Let's do this. Police killings, Japan. All right, so a list of killings by law enforcement officers by country. So we've got Vuvuzela here with 5,000, so that's not good. Where is United States? Where is United States? Is it not on this list? Did they take it off? United States, there we go. Crap. United States. Okay. 1,146 in 2019. 1,146 by police. So the military isn't killing people on our streets. At least we don't have statistics for this year after Portland. But anyway, 1,146 by the United States. So I'm not sure where I got that number from. I thought it was from this graph. But if we look down here at Japan, 2. 2. Let's look at other nations. Shall we? Germany, 11. Australia, 0. 0. Canada, none. Mexico, 145. And I know there's disparities between the population. Like Mexico has roughly half the population we do. But if so, if the statistics were aligned and their population was doubled, they would have about 300, not 1,146. This is a problem in America. Let's see, where's we're just looking specifically at police. I guess they don't itemize it out for Vuvuzela over here, or Brazil. Afghanistan, a country that has active war zones, 49. Let's see. What other ones can we look at? France, 26. Now, significantly less population, sure. But what is this portion right there, this colored portion? Rate per 10 million people. So for Japan, their rate of police killings per million people is 0.2. What's ours? 34. 34 people per 10 million. France, 3.8. They have 26 police killings a year. Hong Kong, now that's just Hong Kong. They have 1. And they have 7 million people. Do they have like China as a whole? I don't know if they would actually report accurately anyway. But anyway, you get what I'm getting at here is that there's a massive disparity between America and other developed nations around the world with high populations. Like, and I'm just going to continue using Japan as an example because they have roughly half the population we do. They have 127 million. We have 329, so a little more than a third, and they have 2. This is a problem in America that we're trying to address. And her coming in here with her little Brit bong accent trying to deny what's going on in my country is infuriating.
Almost 10.5 million arrests and 53 million interactions between police officers and civilians, there were around 1,000 fatal shootings by police. That being said,
yes, and I've said this in previous videos, that the majority of police interactions are peaceful. The problem is the large amount that aren't, and the large amount that results in deaths. And a lot of them are unjustified. Not most, but there are a lot. Because that number should be 0.
most of these people were considered armed and dangerous. And contrary to popular belief,
Sure, most of them may be considered armed and dangerous. But the fact that you have to put most instead of all in that sentence shows you that there's a problem. Police officers should not be murdering people. They're supposed to enforce the law. They're supposed to be held to a higher standard, and they are not.
even when violent offenders are fatally shot by police, it has nothing to do with racial bias.
That's not true at all. You are lying. You're not from this country, so you don't understand, so I'll give you that. But there is a racial bias in this country, and I talked about that earlier in the video.
From 2019 concluded there is no significant evidence of anti-black disparity in the likelihood of being fatally shot by police.
What is her source?
Significant evidence of to do with racial bias. Data from 2019 concluded there is no
Data from 2019, but no source is given. Nice.
significant evidence of anti-black disparity in the likelihood of being fatally shot by police. So let's talk about those unarmed fatal shootings. In 2019, of the people who were fatally shot, 41 were unarmed, 9 were black, 19 were white, 89 police officers were killed in the line of duty.
Okay, so I'm not sure what the third statistic is. Her source is the interwebs. Of course, source, trust me, dude. So I'm not sure why she's throwing in there the police death statistic. Unless it's cops killing each other, which is fucked up. But you choose to be a police officer, and you go into it knowing that it's a dangerous job. You join the military, you knowing it's a dangerous job. You don't go to war and then wonder why people are dying. You choose these career paths voluntarily, knowing they're dangerous. It is sad that people are dying, yes, but that's part of the job. But that being said, not sure why that's relevant. And to the first portion of her comment, there are 9 deaths, 9 of the killings were black, 19 were white, despite the fact that 13% of the population is black and roughly 60% is white. That disparity should be much higher than a difference of 10. That's what they're talking about. That's where the racial bias comes in. That's where the disproportion is in police killings and police brutality against people of color. Right there. You played yourself.
And the fact is, in the United States, you are more likely to die of medical malpractice than you are by a police officer.
Wow, would you look at that? Our medical system is fucked up. You know what would fix that? Socialism. But that's not relevant here. It's like those people that are like, oh, you're more likely to get killed by cows than you are to get killed by a shark. We still view sharks as dangerous animals. We don't view cows as dangerous animals. You just have a higher chance of interacting with them because we're land animals. But just because you're more likely to be killed by a cow than you are to be killed by a shark doesn't mean that sharks aren't dangerous and that you should try to limit your interaction with them as much as possible. Just because our healthcare industry sucks doesn't mean there isn't a problem with law enforcement. I don't know why you're saying this.
But let's say you're not convinced.
Well, I know why you're saying this, but it's not really a valid point to make.
And you don't actually think the police are killing people, but rather they're roughing them up and hurting them during arrests. And let's just pretend for argument's sake that police don't have body cams that are recording their actions day in and day out.
You see, I know over in Britbongerland, they don't have this problem and they have cameras everywhere. There are tons of places in America that don't have body cams on their police officers. Every single police officer in this country should be wearing a body cam from the second they clock in to the second they clock out. Hands down, bar none. Every single fucking one of them, and there are way too many that aren't in this country. So we don't have to pretend it's a real thing, Sydney. There are cops that don't wear body cameras.
How violent are the police really? As it turns out, not very. A 2018 study that looked at almost...
What study? What study are you citing? Where's your fucking source?
120,000 criminal arrests across 3 large precincts found that 99% of those arrests were carried out without any physical force. When the officers did use force, in 98% of those cases, the suspect sustained mild or no injury. So just to confirm...
Okay, what about the other 2%? You shouldn't need to bludgeon someone until they stop moving to arrest them. The majority of police training goes into firearms training and hand-to-hand combat so that they can subdue criminals. If you have that much training, you shouldn't need to brutalize somebody to put handcuffs on them. So this is what they try to do. They say, well, most of them are peaceful, so it's just a few bad apples. But most of them are peaceful, so we really shouldn't address the few that aren't. That's a problem. You get why that's a problem, right? Because that number is not 0. And in law enforcement, that number should be 0. I believe it was Dave Chappelle? I believe it was Dave Chappelle, or no, it's Chris Rock, I think. Fuck. I'm mixing up my comedians. Oh man, I'm gonna get called racist for this. But anyway, there was a comedian that said that the only profession that we accept bad apples in is policing, and you don't see that in other professions like being an airline pilot. Well, most of our pilots land was the joke. Policing, there shouldn't be any room for bad apples, and if there is a bad apple, they should be removed immediately and held accountable for their actions. The problem is they're not. The problem is that number is not 0, and that's what we're trying to address. Yes, the majority of police interactions are peaceful, but it's that minority that we need to get rid of and that we're trying to deal with. You don't see these kind of things happening in other countries. Over in England, over in the UK, and I believe the majority of the EU, police don't even carry guns. They do in America because everybody here has guns. But the majority of their training goes into how to use those guns and how to use physical force to subdue people. And yet they still seem to fuck it up. That's the problem. You can't say that there's not an issue because it's not a big issue. If you had cancer, you wouldn't look at your body and say, well, most of my body doesn't have cancer. It's only about 2% of it because it's brand new. It's brand new itty bitty baby cancer. You wouldn't say it's not a problem because 98% of your body doesn't have cancer. You would address the problem. You would fix the problem. You would get chemotherapy or whatever other sort of therapy you could afford because we're in America and our healthcare system is fucked. But you would address the issue. You wouldn't ignore it because it's only 2%.
Than 1% of arrests result in some sort of mild to serious injury. It's really easy to forget that police officers are people just like you and me who are working in an extremely hostile environment. That doesn't excuse the behavior.
That's because they make it hostile. Don't forget that. The vast majority of the time it's escalated. The things that brutality and shootings happen and they're not justified, it was escalated by the police. Just like we saw in the body cam footage from George Floyd that got leaked, which is a video that I covered, but the audio was fucked up, so I couldn't upload it.
Of bad cops, of course. But it does demonstrate that the majority of police officers do show an enormous amount of restraint, even when confronted with daily horrific crimes and danger. I think people forget that police officers go to work every day in a society that says that they're trash, and then they have people acting out that overt hostility towards them.
When I worked at McDonald's, there were plenty of people that thought I was trash. When I worked at McDonald's, there were plenty of people that were openly and actively hostile. When I worked at McDonald's, I was berated on a daily basis. and attacked verbally on a daily basis. I was still required to keep my cool, and if I lost it, I was fired. Why do we hold McDonald's employees to a higher standard than we do police officers? Can you answer me that, Sydney?
Police officers are still people with feelings who are aware of the fact that if something goes wrong at work or something gets out of control, there's a likelihood that they won't be going home to their families. Of course, there's room for improvement when it comes.
No matter what line of work you are in, if things go wrong, you might not go home. It may be higher for police officers, but they choose that job. Again, you're not born as a police officer. You choose to go into that profession. And you have the option to quit anytime. They're not locked into a contract. I mean, like the military. If you don't like your job and you're in the military, you're stuck. Sorry, buddy, you signed a contract. When you're a police officer, you can quit at any time. So if you're in the military and you find yourself in a dangerous situation and you don't want to be there, you have no choice. If you're a police officer and you find yourself in a dangerous situation and you don't want to be there anymore, you can leave. You can quit. If you can't handle being a cop, don't be a fucking cop.
Comes to policing and the relationship between police officers and civilians. But the destructive narrative that all cops are racist, disgusting, violent people needs to end.
Nobody's saying that all cops are racist, violent, disgusting people. All cops work for a racist and violent system and refuse to speak up about it when they see something is wrong, when they see their fellow officers do something fucked up. That's the problem. We recognize that not every single cop is murdering people. We recognize that not every single cop is a racist. We recognize that not every single cop is the problem. Directly. The problem is they don't speak up when fucked shit happens. That's the problem. That's the umbrella that all cops get put under because they all belong under it. If you don't speak out against injustice in a system that you actively participate in, you're part of the problem. If you don't want to be part of the problem, be part of the solution. Speak up about it. And have legislation put in place to protect those whistleblower cops. Because there are officers that do speak up, but the problem is, when they do speak up, they are ostracized, they're harassed, they're abused, and sometimes full-on fucking institutionalized as a way to retaliate against them. Because they spoke out against officers and they broke that wall of silence. And that needs to change. There are other government organizations that have similar things, like in the military. If you see something wrong, say something, regardless of rank. If you're in the military and you see somebody that vastly outranks you do something wrong and illegal, you can speak up about it, and there are systems in place that protects that person from retaliation or retribution. Law enforcement doesn't have that. Why not? They should. If you want to fix the problem and want to say it's only a few bad apples, allow your officers to speak out against those bad apples and to have the problem addressed rather than forcing them into a wall of silence. And if they break that, harassing them, berating them, and ousting them from the community. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents on it. If you want to fix the problem, be part of the solution. If you don't want to be part of the solution, well, you're part of the problem. And that includes all law enforcement officers. But thankfully, thanks to the protests that we've seen recently, we are seeing legislative change. We're seeing there's a bill before Congress right now that would institute a national database of police officers that got reprimanded or even fired for excessive force or basically doing fucked up shit, so that they can't just go to the next county over and work at that police precinct. There are things that are being put in place that are changing that police precincts are being defunded across the country, which they rightly should be. And those funds should be allocated to different organizations that can address problems that law enforcement, police officers specifically, shouldn't necessarily be addressing. Like homeless people, people having a mental health crisis, things like that. But things are changing for the good, and they should be, and it's encouraging, and we just need to keep fighting until we get to where we need to be. It's an uphill battle, but we've been going for coming up on 3 months now, and I think we've got the wherewithal to make it happen. So yeah, just stay strong, everybody. Keep fighting, keep protesting, keep speaking out. Don't let people in your family, people in your personal life, people in the government silence you. We have the right to speak out, and we are. And change is happening. And it's really encouraging. There's a lot of other shit we need to work on, but we'll get to it. And I believe in this country, and that we can be better, and that we should be better, and it doesn't need to necessarily devolve into violence for that to happen. Things are getting better, but we've got a long way to go. Keep fighting the good fight. Thanks for tuning in. If you're watching this on stream, feel free to drop a follow. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit the bell button, so you can see when I upload. I upload at least weekly, sometimes more than that. I don't have a really a set schedule, but I try to upload at least bare minimum once a week. Feel free to follow. Let's see if I can do this right. Let's see, hang on. Follow me at my socials right there. Yes, I'll come have some nuggets, honey. All right, well, I'm going to go have some nuggets. Feel free to follow me at my socials. Follow me on Twitter. I always tweet before I go live. And join my Discord. The links will be down in the description below. But thanks for tuning in. You guys have a good one. Peace.